hello, people. Hold on. Is this charge? Fuck, this needs to be charged during that. Okay, keep that in there because I'm gonna need that for later on. All right, hello, people of YouTube land and people that are part of the Cringe Crew community Discord, and those that follow Ted and I on Twitch. I am Traductus.
I'm Ted.
And it's another Thursday, and we are reviewing the second to last Daniel Craig James Bond film, 2015's Spectre. And this is also directed by Sam Mendes. So far, the last James Bond film directed by Sam Mendes. He previously directed Skyfall. And I think this one should have had Fall in the title, but we'll get to that. This was released, like I said, in 2015. It had a budget between $245 to $300 million. Again, arranged budget. And I actually cheated and looked at the budget for No Time to Die, and it's also arranged budget. So, nice to know that the Daniel Craig Bond films are, consistent of a range budget. Which I wonder if is used for tax evasion purposes.
Reasonable enough.
But the box office is $880.7 million, adjusted for inflation, making this the second highest grossing Bond film, with the previous film Skyfall being the number one. Okay, and this was written. Actually had 4 people on the script. We had Neil Purvis and Robert Wade, who co-wrote The World Is Not Enough, and all the way up to No Time to Die. There's also English playwright Jeremy Butterworth. But here is a, when we get into dislikes, because I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about conversion from the imperial system to the metric system.
Surprisingly, I didn't write that note down, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay. Because one of the script writers, American playwright, John David Logan. So if anyone's fucked up on this, the conversion,
I'll blame him.
I think we know who to blame.
All right.
On that when we get to dislikes.
We'll cross that bridge.
Please write that down so we remember the shit on him on that.
Oh, I'm there.
And if it wasn't him, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Logan, if it wasn't your fault.
Always blame the Americans.
American.
Always blame the Americans.
We know how stupid we are.
Always blame the Americans, man. It's their fault.
All right. So, we're going to go into casting. That will be, obviously, Daniel Craig returns as James Bond. Basically, everybody returns, including Judi Dench, whose character, passed away in the at the end of the previous Bond film. But she, is in a video recording and posthumous. God damn it!
Posthumous.
Thank you, Lee. Gives Bond his mission. But obviously, the current M, Derek Mallory, is played by Ralph Fiennes. So 2 M's again, technically. But for the new cast, we have. Also, I'd like to mention that Mr. White comes back, played by the same dude. But new cast, we have Andrew Scott as C, who is the head of the new Joint Surveillance Program. And also one of the villains on here. He is known for playing James Moriarty off of the BBC's series, as in British Broadcasting Corporation or whatever. Not what you think, you internet scumbag, dirty mind people. The Sherlock series, James Moriarty, obviously, the nemesis of Sherlock Holmes. So therefore, adjusted for playing bad guys. We have for one of the Bond women here, Monica Bellucci as Lucia Sciarra. She got cast the role at age 51, making her the oldest Bond woman out of the entire series. So it's nice to know that we finally got past ageism when it comes to women in these films. So, yay, progress!
It took 27 iterations, but we got there.
She's known for playing Mary Magdalene in Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ, and also Persephone in Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolutions. For the heavy, as in the henchman that is indestructible, we got Dave Bautista as Mr. Hinks, former professional wrestler.
What the fuck was that casting? Can we just detour here for a second? Who the fuck looks at Batista and goes, you know what he's perfect for is a spy thriller? No.
Well, I'll tell you why. His WWE gimmick was that he had like a secret agent thing. So therefore he had a Bond. He kind of had a Bond gimmick going on. So therefore it was like, all right, but
they've used other muscle that has like acting chops, or is at least like tough and intimidating. And I see him, and I just think he's an oafishly large goofball. Man, like it's just who the fuck?
Do you think his portrayal of Drax the Destroyer had something to do with that?
No, I think just looking at his face, he's massively large and terrifying, and then you see his face, and he's just a fucking goofball. No,
but he's got metal fingernails.
The other part of this is that, like, for the vast majority of his appearances, he's not doing things that take advantage of his physical fucking size. Like, the car chase scene, he's just a very, very large man in a very small car. He looks like Mr. fucking Incredible, and it's an entire, like, 15-minute chase scene. Like, why would you cast Batista? We're gonna move on.
It is funny that they give him like the most massive freaking gun they could, as if Batista with metal fingernails wasn't overkill enough.
Right? Just who the fuck casted this? I hate. Okay, we can move on.
We also have Leah Seido as Madeline Swann, the main Bond woman. She is known for playing Celestine in Diary of a Chambermaid. She's also Sabrine Moreau in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And she was in Inglourious Basterds as Charlotte La Petite. Now, that brings us to the main Bond villain, who is Franz Oppenhauser, a.k.a., spoiler alert, Ernst Stavro Blofel, played by Christoph Waltz. If you don't know who Christoph Waltz is, he plays SS Officer Hans Landa in Inglourious Basterds, also Dr. King Schultz in Django Unchained. He's a very, very well-known actor and has played villains and also heroes, oddly enough, throughout this, and obviously seems to be like, a no-brainer choice to be Blofeld. And by the way, before this came out, they only let known that he was Franz Oppenhauser. They didn't say that he was Blofeld. By the way, I will say this, I was not fooled by the reveal that he was Blofeld, because, you don't cast the villain from Inglourious Basterds and have the movie called Spectre and not have him be Blofeld. Like, I don't give a shit who you're trying to fool. You didn't fool me. But that being said, I guess we're now on to likes and dislikes. I'm surprised how fast we got through this. Maybe I can find some... there was a gap between this film and Skyfall due to the fact that Daniel Craig actually broke his arm in the previous movie, apparently.
Interesting.
Yeah. That being said, I say we should go for likes and dislikes. Elliot, I'm pretty sure, like, my rants for dislikes is going to get there.
Yeah, it's going to be a long one. Buckle up, kiddos. All right. Okay. Let's find a solid place to start here.
Cinematography?
Cinematography was decent. I camera angles were still pretty good. It felt like it took a lot of the same elements of the positive one from the last movie, just in more open air, so it was harder to appreciate. Like more big open spaces rather than tight spaces. So while the camera work was still really good, just in a little different environment that makes it a little less notable. Lighting was still good, just
I
not
agree.
quite the same. Sound for the most part was pretty good. They had a couple moments where things got goofy and either didn't quite line up or they used not quite correct sounding things, but for the most part I think it was solid enough. um
I mean, I'd agree. I'd agree wholeheartedly. Um, I don't know what to add to that.
it's okay. So one of my likes was that basically this movie did a really good job at creating discomfort. um
I agree.
they did a whole lot to intentionally make you uncomfortable, and they did it in really weird fashions that was pretty unique. They definitely made you feel I, d- unsettled, I guess is probably the best word I have for it. That it put you in weird places that forced you to pay attention to things really intentionally. They did a really good job at putting you off your game. Um, I appreciated the way in which this movie tied the last few together. I know Stallman's going the way in which they did it. Stallman's going
Uh,
to have his beef later on.
I will say this. It's not. After I have my beef, I will even defend some of the choices because I will say this much. It's not that it ties into um Quantum of Solace or Casino Royale that I have a gripe with. It's just Skyfall. But I will even have a counter to my
Yeah.
frustration that I still have. I'm not as frustrated about it beforehand because I had some time to think it through. But
We paused the
I will
movie to be
say,
angry.
yeah.
So I'm glad we're
But
not there, but
yeah.
um well, so anyway, part of the reason, like, they put a bunch of plot lines together, they made it feel that like the last few movies weren't completely and totally independent. Like this one really had a seam between them. I'll admit that some of those seams were weak or lazy or not pre-prepared, which kind of detracted from it a little bit. But like
Which doesn't help with Skyfall being directed by the same dude. It's like,
well,
come on.
I mean, if the goal is to tie movies together and you don't recognize it until you're already making the last one, like obviously it can
Well,
be difficult, you know. If while
right.
making Casino Royale they didn't recognize that 3 movies from now we're gonna tie it all together, like it becomes difficult to write movies for that. But so be it.
Which they said, well, No Time to Die was out. Like, no, we had this all planned. And to me, I'm just like, I don't think you did.
Yeah. We'll get to that one in the next one, but I think that it really helped. Like, so the note that I wrote was that Judi Dench's brief appearance was very out of character, right?
Yeah.
So while it was essentially just a cameo, um, like she is recorded as saying, "Hey, if you're watching this, I'm dead. Please kill this guy 007." And I think like the way in which their relationship develops over the previous movies, like indicates you to believe that while that does seem out of character just as an isolated incident, if you think about it, it's, well, look at all of the stuff that he's done. She knows that he'll do it, like, and they have that relationship together where he's going to do it on her
Right.
behalf. Like, it really, like, having seen the previous sets of movies makes plot points like that like completely and totally reasonable, even when they do seem out of character.
Right.
Um, I also thought that this movie did a really good job at connecting its own plot, like tying things together, like bringing different elements of the movie together in one climax event. Like I thought was really strong. Whether or not they
Yeah.
considered this movie while making the previous ones, this one they definitely had the end goal in mind as they were thinking about the beginning. All of the different pieces and all of the different struggles came to one meeting point to create an end, which I thought was
Yeah.
well developed.
Yeah. I agree. I agree that this movie was well thought out. I will definitely attest to that. And there isn't really There isn't too many plot holes per se in this.
I wouldn't say plot holes. There's some small like continuity errors, I guess,
Yeah,
or things that were over dramatized. I have a few in dislikes, and not to get too far
right.
to the other side of that, but like for the most part, they connected everything within the movie well. They just took some liberties that maybe they shouldn't have. But
Right.
I mean, as far as keeping their own movie connected, I think they did a pretty decent job.
Yeah, I think with me, I think character work in this is actually not bad either. Like, I think Daniel Craig does a good job again. Q does an amazing job.
Hmm.
Q knocks it out of the park. I really like Ralph Fiennes as M. I do like how he's. It seems like when these movies go on with like each M, it seems like the M is more hands on by each time M comes. Like I'm expecting like when the new series comes out and if it's a different M, um assuming they don't assuming that they recast Ray Fiennes as opposed to doing what they did with like Judi Dench and just like bring him over. um I really think that maybe the next time we'll actually see like M actually being on a mission with Bond
Yeah.
at this point. Because we're almost there with Ray Fiennes movie. I also I think Leah Seido as Madeline Swann. I think that character's isn't written. There's a few kind of like I'd say some chemistry issues. It's kind of continuity ish
Yeah.
with her character, with her relationship to Bond, which I might go with like dislikes, but it's forgivable. It's kind of like a typical movie trope with that. But overall, I think like her character is actually rather interesting, and and as like a lot of Bond women beforehand that in this series and the Daniel Craig era, I like how she can handle herself. I think Jesper Christensen does a phenomenal job as Mr. White again. Um, and comes down to Christoph Waltz. Despite my issues of how they kind of written Blofeld, I think he does a phenomenal job, and it's definitely a no-brainer to have him as Blofeld. And I love how like they kind of like gradually how he uh kind of turns into the Blofeld that people think in their mind, which would be, Donald Pleasance's, character as Blofeld. As in like they kind of give you little hints as to like, he's Blofeld, as in they show the white cat. And then near the end of the film, after like the watch blows up in his face, he has that scar that
Hmm.
that Donald Pleasance has. So you kind of get like the development of like the process of how Blofeld becomes Blofeld, which I find rather interesting and actually well done. Especially that fucking makeup job. Like that was top notch. Whoever did that.
Yeah.
Um,
The effects on the physical effects were actually very, very good as far as makeup and costuming go. They were solid.
I also like the fact that during the car chase, since it is an unfinished like MI6 vehicle, uh, there's stuff that doesn't work, and there's a few comedy moments of that. And also like him like turning on the radio on accident. He's like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
not that." And it's like I think that scene was actually rather well done. I think the car chase itself is pretty damn good. I wouldn't say as good as some of like the chase scenes in previous Bond films, but it's definitely a lot better than the choppy like fast cuts that were in Quantum of Solace where you couldn't understand like what exactly the hell was going on. Um
I'd agree. I mean, I think the car chase itself extended too long, and I'm still frustrated to watch big ass Batista in this tiny little fucking sports car. But I mean, for the great, like for the chase for what it was it, I mean, it was good.
right. Um I also like the fact that the fight was inside the train and not outside the train between Bond and Batista.
Thank the maker, dude.
So we have, progress in films where all right, we'll actually use the inside of the train this time. Um See, other like I actually like the ending very, very well, to be honest. I think like if this would have been the last Daniel Craig Bond film, I think that was actually a really decent send off.
The very end, I would agree with you.
Yes, the very
The
end.
lead up to the end, like through the climax, no shot.
No shot in hell. But like the very, very end is what I'm talking about. Because like spoiler, she doesn't get Tracy'd at the beginning of the next film.
Yeah,
The only reason why I say that there's some interesting things that they do with her character, like she leaves Bond between films, but she's in the next one, and there's interesting things that they do with her character that I'm not going to reveal. But I figured, like saying that she's not Tracy'd at the beginning of the movie,
yeah,
doesn't like that spoiler doesn't ruin anything. But the fact of the matter is, I totally thought she was going to, just because of the how the ending was, and Spectre made me, really want to like. As soon as I was able to watch No Time to Die, I was looking for it. You know,
yeah.
so like I'm glad that the ending was done so well, the very end, that I was looking forward to the next one to see how they would um uh follow up on Bond and Madeline's relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because they did take so many things from previous Bond movies that, like, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be unexpected for that to happen in the next movie, but I
Right.
mean, grand scheme of things, like I think the way that they developed in you know the previous characters and developed them to be similar but of their own twist, I thought was good. Um, I don't. You have any more likes before I start moving along?
Um, that's about what I have. I will say this: I didn't hate this movie as much as I did the last time I watched it. But we're gonna have Ted's dislikes, and then I'm going into my rant.
All right, I'm gonna start with some smaller stuff. This movie is paced really, really slowly. Even the action takes a long time, which like it's not
And
bad.
this
It's not.
movie's long.
Yeah,
Like,
like the build up to the climax is slow, and they probably could have cut off some fat. When you are in the action, it feels like the action takes longer than it has to take. And I'm not sure if that's contributed from the fact that you have to watch so long to get to that point, or if it's actually just unnecessarily long. But it felt like it moved very slowly. Um, this this movie has issues with vehicles. Just
I'd say also definitely suspense and disbelief on that.
yeah. There were a lot of points that I had issues suspending disbelief or buying into the continuity or just poor writing. The best example that I have is the scene with Mr. White. I discussed this at length as we were watching, but basically, like,
I couldn't even. I tried coming up with some half-assed reason, and I'm just like, that was very weak.
well, right. So essentially, like, Bond wants information from him. Like, he won't isn't getting the information from him. The solution to that is hand him a gun. He gives him the information and then shoots himself. Like, just why is he motivated to give the information if he's got the tools? If he's trying to die, kills himself. Why does he feel obligated to give up the information? Even if
And my thing is that he probably thought in his head, well, I guess it's either this or like, who the hell else am I gonna trust? But even a line just throwing that in, they just had like a bunch of bullshit at the beginning of like reasons to not trust Bond. And then it was just like him being steadfast, and then out of nowhere, just kind of like, yeah, you're right.
And even if you use the defense that it's like he'll keep my daughter safe, like, wouldn't she have been safe if he just died and said nothing? Like, it just kind of.
I'd say no, but we didn't really realize that until later in the film for how like the domestic spying and how like uh they're everywhere. But then again, that's how they find isn't that how they find out where
Mhm.
she's at?
Yeah, yeah. Like that's just it, right? Is if he had said nothing to Bond, just taken the gun and offed himself, like she would have been safer than giving over the information when everybody's being watched. And I think he knew that because there's cameras full of shit that
He's
he's watching
that
in his basement when Bond finds it. Like it's
he's
just
also a part of Spectre. He's not dumb. He's
right.
not
Like
fucking
he
dumb.
knows this plot. Like he knows the end game. I just it doesn't make like I cannot make it make sense.
Also, kudos to Mr. White for being a slimy, murderous bastard, but drawing the line at human trafficking,
Yeah.
and that's why he has a falling out and then gets poisoned by Spectre.
I think this movie, so we talked about in the last movie that like there wasn't necessarily a Bond woman. They didn't like hyper focus on the romantic stuff, and I think this movie tried to make up the gap where they missed in the last movie.
Right.
There was a lot of just unnecessary. I don't pushy is the wrong word, but like so when Bond is trying to get information from the first what's her name?
Yeah.
Is it
Lucia Sciarra, Monica Bellucci's the
Monica
actress.
Bellucci is who I was looking for, but basically like just kind of like, hey, who was your husband? What did he do? Also, we fucking now, and it wasn't him like necessarily forcing himself upon her, but it just
No.
like it just developed in a completely unnecessary and unrealistic way because they're like, we need fucking in this one. It's just it happened not necessarily as egregiously throughout the movie, but there were definitely like, all right, this
Yeah,
maybe you're pushing this hard.
and then also like when it comes to like Madeline Swann and Bond, uh like she starts out just like, it's like, I know my dad was Inspector and stuff like that. I don't like assassins. She's very antagonistic towards Bond. And then she kind of, at the train, she sort of starts kind of warming up to him a little bit. But then after they kill Batista, they just fuck
Yeah,
afterwards. And
right.
it's
It's
like,
just like
it's
the
like
pushing of
there wasn't, it's like we missed a couple scenes
yeah,
before it led
just
up to that, you know?
again, pushy gives an implication that it was not, consensual. So I don't want to use the word pushy, but like they kind of over accelerated the attraction, and it all of it sat weird. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't have been missing anything in this movie without any Bond woman in this one again either. To be completely honest.
I know that the whole fact of the matter is with this one is like they're actually showing like Bond actually falls in love and retires at the end, but
Right, but all of the lead up and all of the
it's
romanticism
done
before
it's
then
done
is
kind of
done so poorly.
so poorly.
Um,
um
another, this movie had a really weird issue with using multiple languages. I'm not even here to tell you that every movie needs to be in English because they got to be able to understand, but they balanced a whole lot
subtitles
of
would have helped.
subtitles would have been great because there were a whole lot of like, especially in the first meeting with Spectre when Bond gets himself in the room, there's at least 4 different languages that happen. There doesn't appear to be any translators. That like there's no system. It's just 4 different languages, and you as a viewer have no clue what's happening because they don't give you anything. It's just,
Until the
man,
one English speaker's like, okay, they're doing this. But it's like, okay, that's one section. What about the other previous sections? Like, what else is was the whole conversation that? Or I feel like there was like 5 different conversations that happened and we only got one translated.
right, and it was like it didn't even seem like a full translation. It was like, hey, I just heard 7 pages worth of information. Here's a 4-sentence paraphrase. Like it just, I don't know. That was the most notable one, but there was a couple other points where like people used languages in weird locations that don't necessarily line up, or people speaking multiple languages. Just like there was, for the parts that were not solely in English, it became very hard to follow or understand why they were important. If they were going to talk in multiple languages that you aren't supposed to understand through the Spectre meeting, like, well, then why are we watching this whole Spectre meeting?
Right.
Even in the opening scene where the guys are speaking, it was Italian, right?
I believe
Or was
so.
it was Italian or French, something.
There's Italian. I know the African members of Spectre were probably, if I remember right, it was like in a French-speaking African country they're from.
Either way, like even in that opening
Yeah.
scene, they're speaking a foreign language, and like you're not understanding why.
I know
Bond
there
is
was Italian, French, and Spanish
right.
once, and then there was German.
Right.
thrown in there as well.
Right, like, but it was like you don't understand why Bond is looking in this window trying to assassinate someone. You know what I mean? Like it just
Right.
there's not, because of the use of languages. You found it hard in certain scenes to understand the purpose of what was going on.
Yeah, I will say this though, with the first Spectre meeting, I do like the introduction of Batista's character. That was like really well done, and then they ruined it with the car chase with him in the small ass car.
How does Batista agree to that role? He's 6 foot something, and they're like, hey, this car has 4 inches of leg room. Good luck, buddy. Like who does that? That poor man.
I think because his gimmick in WWE was like a James Bond type of thing. I think he was just a fan of the series, so he was like, "Hell yeah, I'll do it."
Bro, if they tell you, hey, you're gonna do a car chase in this tiny little car, but you're barely gonna move them of 30 miles an hour, which is my next shtick. Hold on. So like if it's, you're gonna only be moving 30 miles an hour because of the narrow streets and the way that you have to turn through places, like why not just give him a full size fucking sedan? He could have done this in a fucking Ford Taurus and had more space for himself. He doesn't need to be Mr. Incredible in a tiny little ass shoebox of a sports car. Fuck,
Sorry
man.
if you hear my fan. It's too fucking hot.
You're
I don't
good.
want to be a sweaty mess.
You're good. So the next thing, I didn't have to write it down. I'm telling you, we got there. Some American had his hands too deep in this movie, and he was too much in charge for anyone to tell him he was a moron and an asshole. So they were explaining the specs of this car that Bond ended up stealing from MI6, and they said,
which was well done, by the way. He just left a bottle of champagne.
The scene was well done and all, but they said the car gets from 0 to 60 in however many seconds it was. It's not important. All right. So I thought about it, and if they're in Britain, they're not using miles per hour. They don't care how fast it gets to 60 miles an hour because they don't use miles, right? They use kilometers. We looked it up. You know what 0 to 60 is? If you get to there in kilometers, it's like 34 miles an hour. If you go to 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, you're driving a Ford Taurus.
I guess in this universe, everybody is like driving fucking Yugos except for Bond.
All I'm saying is if 0 to 60 is supposed to be an impressive pace, if you're measuring in a realistic standard, right? Like for the country they're driving in, he was really impressed that it took 3 whole seconds to get to 35 miles an hour.
That's correct.
I'm just throwing that out there.
And it got to 30. Wow, that was a fast 35.
Yeah. Grand scheme of things, like this was a relatively low-speed car chase for most of it, just because of the scenery they had to use. I mean, it was still well done.
And the old man that was blocking Bond throughout it.
Yeah, he was actually going 35. But anyway, the last thing I have is more continuity shit, but there were a whole lot of things that just they wrote themselves into a corner, and then
which is why I think what happens in No Time to Die happens, because there's a couple of things they did. I admit they wrote themselves into a huge corner in this.
There were just things that kind of got lazy. So the plane chase just kind of was too convenient, right? Like just things shouldn't work out that way. It would just really, I recognize that Bond has some superhuman luck or ability or whatever the hell that we've talked about several times.
Which comes and goes.
Right. We've talked about it through all of the Daniel Craig movies. I get that there's some sense of superhumanness, but
I blame Marvel.
Too convenient. When they're trying to escape the old MI6 building and he says, just trust me, and then they just fucking jump. There is no reason that net would ever be there.
Should have been there.
No, if you like, not in any of the shots of the MI6 building before it blew up. Not in any sense of rationality can you think, man, you know what secret agents need is a giant fucking trampoline that sits above the lobby just in case they need to jump from 15 stories. Like that. I promise you that net was never. Never there. It never got established why it would be there. The building blew up, was destroyed. Like the whole thing. That net would have never been there. Should have never been there. Could have never been there. They wrote themselves into a corner.
Shot of the boat that they escaped in. They could why couldn't they just shot a scene where the net was there?
That's what I'm saying. Like, they never established that it was there. They wrote themselves into a corner and realized, how is he going to get down 15 flights of stairs before this thing blows up? They wrote themselves into a corner. The same with like the end scene. They shoot down the helicopter with a
Oh
fucking
my god, I
handgun.
was gonna get to that.
Look, the boat is moving on water.
With a Walther PPK.
It's the boat is not a stable surface. It's bouncing on the water. It's never going to sit perfectly flat, and it's moving forward.
With a
Helicopter.
Walther PPK. Alright.
Helicopter is moving faster than the boat in the same direction and airborne, and he manages to take a small handgun and blow this helicopter. No fucking shot, dude. Like, there are several points that they wrote themselves into a corner. We even discussed this as we were watching the movie. Like, the boat belonged to MI6. You could literally strap a fucking minigun onto it and just pepper a hail of fucking bullets at it, and it's more believable.
And shot a rocket.
It's because it's a spy owned craft. Like, it would be more believable than taking your tiny ass little piss poor handgun and shooting a helicopter out of the sky. This isn't fucking Battlefield 4.
And we're not the only ones that fucking notice this, because when I was watching like clips on YouTube for The Living Daylights, where Timothy Dalton's having the final battle against Brad Whitaker, where he's like, shooting like the Walther PPK at the body armor and it like pinks off, and someone goes, called a little pop gun, and Living Daylights takes out a whole helicopter in Spectre.
Yeah.
And my smart ass wrote a comment on there. It had to be upgraded after this incident.
Anyway, I thought the plot was good, but the way in which they wrote themselves into corners and then needed to make really shitty excuses to keep themselves on plot just really hurt the watchability of this film. Like, if you care about like any semblance of realism, this just ain't it.
All right. Am I able to go?
Have at it, bud.
All right. First discrepancy I have, and this is just kind of a nitpick. All right. They tie everything together. All the villains in the previous films are members of Spectre, including the whole Quantum organization, which I find kind of like meh, because with Quantum, it's like you couldn't have had two competing evil organizations that were secretive. Like, did you really have to have Quantum as a micromanaged bureaucracy wing of Spectre? But, but whatever, that's forgivable. It's, meh. Now, I was pissed that they made Silva a member of Spectre, because his whole thing with, like, the revenge on, M was his own vendetta. However, we find out this is all orchestrated by Stavro Blofel, whose whole plan is to make James Bond miserable. All previous plots were to make James Bond miserable.
Before you get too far, I will defend the Silva thing. While I think it undermined that movie, like, at a surface level, I also recognize that, like, Silva taking out M does in fact make Bond's life more miserable and more difficult, so it does still kind of fall in line, even if it's a shitty way to
and
it in there.
I will also say this: it would make sense for Spectre to have Silva do the job, because he does have a personal vendetta.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, the R stands for revenge, so therefore this is right up Spectre's alley. So I don't like it, but I can see the pieces falling in there.
That's all I ask.
All right. Okay. Now we get to Blofeld's character, which is what pisses me off. All right. It's not the, oh shit, the whole base explodes at the end and like it's overdone Michael Bay wise. To me, whatever. At least they made it a little bit more realistic than hydrogen fuel cells being unstable. Okay. Here's the thing. Stavro Blofeld is Franz Oppenhauser. Alright? Franz Oppenhauser is revealed to be Bond's adopted brother, because his Oppenhauser's dad adopts Bond after Bond's parents die in a climate accident. Therefore, Obenhauser gets jealous and kills his own father and fakes his own death and becomes Stavro Blofeld. And his whole plan with like the surveillance and everything, the whole idea of Spectre and all previous plots is to make Bond's life a living hell. Not like, in previous things where he's extorting governments for money, while also simultaneously starting nuclear wars, or also him, threatening to cause mass famines by unleashing a deadly fucking bacteria, just so that way he has diplomatic immunity. We've had a lot more sinister moments than, my daddy paid attention to the adopted kid more. I'm mad. Ugh. It just makes him a lot less sinister. It's like, okay, so he's only after Bond. Granted, he'll go out Great Lakes to go after Bond, but if Bond dies, hey, you know what? Don't have to worry about Spectre anymore. He's just like, all right, my job's done. Have fun. See ya. That's the impression that I get from this. It's probably not going to be like that because he'll probably still be a greedy son of a bitch and try to make more money and stuff. But that's the impression that I get off of that. And on top of that, okay, hold on. Hold the fuck on.
I can start defending whenever you're ready.
Oh, this is the half dead one. I turned off my oh my dude. Okay, I threw that, and it hit the power button on my second monitor and turned it off.
Excellent. We're really on a roll today.
Yeah.
This one isn't scuffed at all. All right. While you're being
I'm
angry,
not done.
okay. I'm really happy we're a video medium, because if this was audio only, this would be the shittiest thing ever.
You've heard of the Austin Powers series, right?
I have.
You are very well aware that it's a parody of James Bond, right?
Among other things, yes.
And Dr. Evil, Austin Powers is a parody of what character in the James Bond series?
Austin Powers is a parody of Bond, yeah.
Dr. Evil?
A Bond villain.
What specific Bond villain?
I mean, his physical characteristics are Blofeld, but I mean, he could be ambiguous Bond villain X, and it wouldn't make a difference.
Thank you. We're going for Stavro Blofeld. Okay. Thank you. All right, right down to Mr. Bigglesworth. Okay? And the scar. And the bald head. Okay. Although he's not bald in this movie. But...
ambiguous Bond villain X, and it would serve the same purpose, but go on.
All right. In Austin Powers and Goldmember, what is the twist of that movie?
That they're brothers.
Mm-hmm. What's the twist in this?
That they're brothers.
Who the fuck had the right idea to be like, yeah, let's steal this from our parody?
Okay.
It's kind of a dumb idea.
Okay.
And on top of that, all right, the reveal that he's Blofeld, in context of the movie, does nothing. Does absolutely fucking nothing. It's just a way to have fans just go be all giddy and shit like that. Now, if you haven't seen the previous Bond films, you have no idea who the hell Blofeld is, so it's not going to work for you. This is definitely complete and total fucking fan service on.
Okay.
And if you're going to reveal that they were like had a connection and that they're brothers or something like that, why not have it like, hey, it's Blofeld, and then reveal, hey, he's also Franz Obenhauser, so that way Bond has a reaction going, oh shit, it's my dead adopted brother.
Oh, that one's the hardest disagreement I have yet. No shot. Nope, no way. No. All right, I'm going to start from the beginning and work my way to the end there from all of your various points, okay? So the start that you have there is that you didn't like that he was revealed to be Blofeld, right? Because Blofeld is not the same villain that he was in previous movies. Okay. So
not particularly. It's the
okay.
I think his villain plot's very weak in this. And I also think that
it detracts from him being sinister.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to disagree really mildly on this one, but okay. So in previous movies where you had Blofeld becoming, his arch nemesis, through multiple movies, through multiple major plot lines, right?
Yes.
What was his purpose in any of those movies? What was his motivation to just destroy planet Earth?
Money and power.
Okay. So
Very
he's
realistic.
still gaining money and power here, right? I mean, he's literally infiltrating the government. He still has it, but it's a purpose behind it. There's a reason that he wants it, and it's established that it's because he's like his entire purpose in life is to gain this money and power by like overcoming Bond, by ruining Bond's life. There's a purpose and a drive to want the same things that he wanted in the previous movie. And I would argue that as a villain, I think it makes him sinister because his whole purpose is to combat Bond. It's not Bond's against him because Bond's a good guy and he wants bad things. It's like intentionally anti-Bond. If you think about like, I hate that we're going back to Christopher Nolan again, but if you think back to like Batman and the Joker, right? Joker has no purpose. There's no reason. He doesn't want money. He doesn't want notoriety. He just wants to be a villain for Batman, right?
He's an agent of chaos.
Right, but that's just it, is that he is the perfect counter to Batman because all he wants is doom to Batman. It's just anti-hero. Now, like, this iteration of Blofeld, to me, works the exact same way. It's just anti-Bond, like, everything we can do to stop him.
And by the way, we also pointed out there were a couple iterations in the last film, but more so in this film, calls back to Christopher Nolan, especially like the scene with...
I hate that we're bringing up Christopher Nolan again, because... Anyway.
Hey, he's your favorite director,
and
his favorite film's on Her Majesty's Secret Service, so...
Listen, it's okay. I hate that we're comparing everything to Christopher Nolan's Batmans. So, the next point that you had, I'm making sure I'm going in order here, is that you didn't like the idea that they stole it from the parody of James Bond, correct?
Yeah, because to me, I think, like, I find it kind of corny-ish to steal it from something that was already made fun of, you know?
Okay. If that's the source material, I agree with you. If it was literally a writer's room full of people going, man, Austin Powers had it right, let's do that in our movie, yeah, that's pretty fucking dumb. However, I think that it gives extra purpose behind him being the arch nemesis, right? If it was just some guy who really hates Bond, there's 006 probably really hates Bond, but he would make a really shitty villain for these movies because they're on the same fucking side. Now there's like, hey, I have a purpose, I have a drive. In the same way that like we watched through this specific set of films, the Daniel Craig films, that we watched Moneypenny's character develop into being Moneypenny, right?
Right.
Like,
and Q's character develop into Q.
Right.
Even Gareth Mallory developing into M.
Exactly. We saw the characters develop. We got background before we established who that character was to really give you a purpose and how they fit into the Bond series. And while this one wasn't necessarily as good as those other examples, I do think it fits the same mold to get you to that point in understanding why that villain is so significant.
Ted?
I know.
I just want to say this, all right?
Uh-huh.
I hate you.
Uh-huh.
And the only reason why I say I hate you is because I'm fucking agreeing with you.
I know. All right, your next point. I'm still moving down the line. Your next point after Austin Powers, I'm missing that one.
Also, I want to say this much, all right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't happen in the next one, but if they reboot this and they have those fucking fembots, I'm gonna bug gasket.
Okay. Noted. What was your next point after the Austin Powers bit? There was
the reveal. I think it would have been better for the character if it was, but more when I think about it, they did keep you guessing, like, what was the Bond's relationship between, him and Obenhauser, and then they reveal it, and then they reveal that he's Blofeld, but, like, to me, obviously, Bond's not going to react because, like, he doesn't, this is a whole, this is a reboot, this has no connection to the Brosnan series back. So, although you could argue every James Bond actor switched is a reboot, but This one's more of a harder reboot than the others, and to me, it's just like, what does what is there to gain story wise outside Bond fans to reveal that Obenhauser's Blofeld?
Well, I think that's part of it, right? Is to some extent I agree with you that like the name change doesn't serve any purpose within the movie, right? That like if you hadn't
Like,
seen the previous Bond
I'm not
movies,
gonna lie. When I first watched this movie, I geeked out because me being a Bond fan, it's like,
Mhm.
yes, they did cast Christoph Waltz's Blofeld. I was right. Hell yeah! And then I
Yeah.
was thinking about it. I'm like, but what significance does it have
Ha-
in this movie? It's kind of like the Phantom Menace, where you see Darth Maul, where you're just like, yeah, this dude's awesome. He's bad. It's like, but there's nothing to him.
yeah,
He just shows up being cool and dies.
I I'll agree with you to an extent
And
that
I'm not talking about expanded universe, all right? I'm talking specifically films, not fan fiction. I'm sorry if I angered any Star Wars fans that are expanded universe, but like until Disney took over, George Lucas just didn't give a shit about the expanded universe and was more concerned about like, the movies that he made.
Right.
But
Anyway, the reveal itself was kind of worthless if you hadn't seen previous movies, and I won't disagree with that. But I think that it was Unity, okay, it creates the ability to advance the plot with Blofeld or with Spectre because now you've connected previous Bond villains to previous organizations. Like it opens that.
and he
door
does
up.
show up in the next one, and it is connected to this.
Right. It opens that door because you've made him Blofeld instead of uh fuck, what's his whatever.
Obenhauser. Just Obenhauser.
But the other part of it is that the way in which they went about revealing it, like they kind of like you said, they do have to keep it. Why is Obenhauser important? Why does Bond know him? What's the connection? The way they draw that out is Obenhauser's the important name. If he had gotten into that meeting and introduced himself as Mr. Blofeld, he goes, "Man, that really looks like my brother," and then it's a wasted plot point, right?
Yeah.
Like there's nowhere outside of like, the daytime soap operas that only your grandmother watches, like that like will say like,
My grandmother
oh, this guy.
didn't. Here's the funny thing: my grandmother didn't watch this. My great grandmother did.
Yeah,
and you did
whatever.
not interrupt her stories.
Whatever the fuck. So, but nowhere other than those crappy TV soap operas are you going to look at someone, not recognize them as your brother, and then they say their name and like, my brother. Like it's just not fucking real, man. That doesn't happen anywhere. The way that they did it, if they were going to do it, this was the way to do it.
This was the way.
I will concede that again, it was unnecessary for anyone who wasn't a long-term Bond fan that hasn't seen all of the movies. Like it added no value to brand new Bond fans or first-time watchers. Admittedly, that's true. But
yeah, this is definitely not a movie to show people first.
Yeah. I think,
and unfortunately, I can't say start out with Casino Royale because like you're not going to know who the fuck Blofeld is.
Admittedly, like I think that you could do it, like to just watch the Daniel Craig hard reboot. Like I think that you could do it. This point might be lost on you. The fact that it's Blofeld would be lost on you, but like in the grand scheme of things, even if that effect is lost on you, it doesn't detract from the film.
I would agree to an extent.
The one thing that I will say is that like I think there was like a what the fuck reaction to it as it happened, right? That like, oh man, it's his brother. Like that seems kind of lazy, but like in the grand scheme of things, if you put more thought into it, it does align with the way the rest of these movies were written. I agree. I'm not thrilled about it. It's not great, but it's not as bad as it is on surface level.
Yeah, despite because how I kind of describe this film, the film is great until like the last third with all this stuff happening. But where I think this movie kind of shits the bed, I will say this is definitely not the worst Bond film that we've seen by a long shot. Like this definitely wasn't Moonraker, Diamonds Are Forever.
That's true. That's
Or
true.
God forbid, this is definitely not this is Citizen Kane compared to Casino Royale 67.
I okay, I'll give you that one. The last thing I have to say about this before we move on to rankings is that I think the part about this movie that I think takes away from it the most, the reason that I'm going to make it as low as it is, although it's not necessarily low. I think the biggest thing was that the plot revealed itself too early if you were paying attention to it. Stallman mentioned the hints towards Blofeld, the idea that like the whole purpose was based off intelligence, and oh shit, they're replacing the intelligence department at MI6. What could possibly how could all these things line up? Like the plot, there's no real punching payoff like there have been in the past 8 to 10 movies. That's like,
yeah, I mean, The World Is Not Enough did a better job at like giving you the pieces that Elektra is the main villain,
right.
but it had a better job at like hiding it and giving it benefit of the doubt.
And it created like a powerful punch within it. This one was just kind of like lead up. I figured it out. They're still leading up. They're still just say the fucking thing. I know it's a thing. And it like as quality as to put this on like a plot board, right? To just make the major markings as to, you know, the major events to write out the plot. This was a really good, strong plot.
Yeah,
Stronger than the last one even. But the way in which they built to that plot, they revealed they tipped their hand too early, and
I agree.
it hurt the watchability. It wasn't bad. Genuinely, I enjoyed the movie, but it hurt itself.
Yeah, I agree. I think the same. I think the same way on that. Which is also kind of why it's difficult for me to rank. Like, to me personally, I think this is the weakest out of the Daniel Craig ones, which a lot of people say it is. But I know, like, a lot of people put this like way down at the bottom, like with like Diamonds Are Forever and Moonraker. But like, I really don't see it that way.
I don't either. I think mine is going to end up higher than Stallman's, but I'm also struggling. I
You also have to figure out where if Skyfall moves because you have it at 5 right now.
I I don't know what to do with that one either. I was genuinely thinking about that one as I was going over my notes again. We watched some
To me,
Friday, so I was thinking
Skyfall's
about
still at number
Saturday.
1. Like, despite my gripes about this saying it undermines Silva and stuff, I still think that that is so far my favorite one.
I think I'm comfortable keeping Skyfall at 5
Okay.
because
I'll remove the asterisk.
I, like I wanted this one to tie Skyfall in better and really create purpose for Skyfall, and I think they detracted from it just a little bit with the like again, it makes sense. The characters line up for, you know, why Silva did the things that he did while being part of Spectre, but I feel like it didn't seal that well enough to move it upward. It feels really bad to keep it at 5 because I feel like it was a significantly more watchable movie than some of the ones above it. But yeah, I this one didn't force Skyfall up at all. I think I think I'm gonna put this one at 10.
Okay.
I I'm struggling anywhere between like 9 and 11 because I enjoyed this more than GoldenEye.
That's blasphemous, right then. But then I remember the man with the golden guns above GoldenEye. So you've already pissed off like the majority of the Bond fan base.
It's fine.
On
I'll still die on that hill that I thought that plot was really good, really well developed, and I thought they handled all of itself. Not important. Okay, we're not. That was a few episodes ago. I think the man with the golden gun was more of a cohesive unit, but I don't think it provided the quality that this one did. So I think I'm going to put Spectre at least above that one. Tomorrow Never Dies. That I think that's where I'm struggling the most. I think I'm going to put this one at 8th because
that's Quantum of Solace.
I'm putting it okay. Sorry, below 8. I'm looking. Yeah, numbers are hard. Putting it at 9th, below Quantum of Solace, above Tomorrow Never Dies.
Oh, okay. All right. I guess I gotta switch that up.
Sorry. Yeah. I'm talking my way through where I'm putting this as we're doing it, but I think this one because it connected so many plot points, it stayed consistent to itself. It told a good story in a strong fashion and introduced like really powerful elements that, you know, related to previous Bond movie. I think I'm sticking this one at 9.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to put this above Live and Let Die at number 12. Just because Live and Let Die, we kind of had similar issues with I mean, I kind of had similar issues with like how like the last part of Live and Let Die is where it kind of goes a little bit off the rails because of, you know, like Mr. Big as a villain uh is, you know, basically not a stereotypical Bond villain. Then he becomes like the benchmark of that stereotype
Yeah,
and completely undermines that. Uh While Spectre, I with the gripes I have with it, I don't think like really ruined the characters character-wise enough where it makes it like of like a huge disappointment, if that makes sense.
that's fair.
Uh, and on top of that, think I just think License to Kill is just the better movie. It's hard for me to really like say why. I think it's just because like I think Bond's motivations in that are, of course, with this, it's more of the villain's motivations, and to me, I think the villain's motivations are not necessarily weak, but like poorly done to the point where it seems weak.
That's fair.
And I think Bond's motivations are more strong in License to Kill for like the plot, as opposed to Blofeld's motivations are in Spectre.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's interesting to see how our lists have developed now. Because, like, as you say, you think License to Kill is a better movie. Like, if I had that same motivation for this one, it would be 19th. It's just interesting to see how our lists have developed.
Right. Like there's a lot of times where we're kind of going back and look at our list because sometimes I look at The World Was Not Enough. I'm like, was I way too hard on Denise Richards?
Now, you
But
know, the one I'm doing that with is actually Doctor No. Like, I as much as I hated watching that movie, like, I compared to some of the other dumb shit we've watched, I genuinely can't tell you that I gave that one a fair shake, and it just had the deficit of going first. I don't know.
yeah,
I may need to do a rewatch of some of these just to refresh before we do like our wrap up episode. But
all right.
yeah, I'm looking at my list and I don't know. I don't know how we've been doing this for 27 weeks either, if we're going to be completely and totally honest.
Yeah, yeah. Oh well, the next one's gonna be the last movie, so
Oh,
far until they make another one.
yep. Segues. Since the next one is our last one, we're looking for another new series to do this with. Obviously, taking a break in between them because the schedule has become tedious. But
Yeah, like I had a semi consistent streaming schedule, and
and then 28 weeks of Bond on a random fucking days and recording on a different random day. But yeah, so if you have any suggestions, anything that you want us to review, anything that you'd be interested in us watching, or just, you know, want us to suffer through experiencing, feel free to,
knowing Mike, he's like, I'm gonna say this before, please not the Amityville series. We want something shorter, not longer. Maybe later on we'll get into the Amityville series, even though the first 2 movies are good and the rest of them are trash. We don't really feel like going through 50 some films after going through like 29.
Yeah. But if you guys have anything else you want to watch, drop it in the comments. Let us know. Obviously, by the time this one airs, we'll be done watching movies, so can't join in for any Bond movies. But obviously, you can still hop in the Discord, do other gaming events, movie watching, all kinds of fun stuff. Even just meet up with some people, watch some different streams, that kind of thing. As always, you can catch us both on Twitch, Stallman at Traductus and myself at Ted Green Eagles. Next week will
Where
be
you
our...
can hear him bitch about the meta in Dead by Daylight.
Well, you can do that on my Twitter too, because that's pretty much all I've tweeted for a month. But obviously, thank you guys for watching this one. Next week will be our last movie review, and then I think we were planning on doing like a separate episode at the end, just as a wrap up, ranking Bonds, going over our final movie rankings.
Yeah. I will. Yeah, and also like Or did we think about doing directors?
I was gonna say I think we've thought about directors, but it's been so hard to follow that I don't know that I could give you a very accurate list.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I would say this Sam Mendes is definitely above like Lewis Gilbert and
yeah,
Guy Hamilton for sure.
yeah. We also talked about music scores. Obviously, that video needs a little more planning before we get to that one, but there will be some form of wrap up episode that occurs at the end. But next week will be our last one for actual films, at least until the new one comes out, and then we'll give you the wrap up, and then try and find something new to do after a break. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.
See ya.